Hi, my name is Abby Lippener, and today I will be talking about the tragedy of the Titanic and how it could have been avoided. 1,500 people went into the sea when Titanic sank from under us. There were 20 boats floating nearby, and only one came back. One. 6 were saved from the water, myself included. 6 out of 1,500. Afterward, the 700 people in the boats had nothing to do but wait. Wait to live, wait to die, wait for an absolution that would never come. You probably recognize where this quote is from. No, let me try again. Jack, I want you to draw me like one of your French girls. The 1997 film, The Titanic, widely popularized the tragedy of the Titanic, but it wasn't totally historically accurate. While the last survivor, Melvina Dean, who was only 2 months old at the time of the sinking, died nearly 10 years ago, according to Oliver Smith, we are still finding lots of stuff out today about the tragedy of the Titanic. Let's look at some statistics first. The Journal of Economic Perspectives gives us a few. 2,207 passengers and crew were on board that night. The average age of everyone on the ship was 30 years old. Unfortunately, only 32% of everyone on board actually survived. Men made up a whopping 78% of those on board, but only 20.6% actually survived, compared to the 72.4% of all women who survived. But if you were women with a child, your odds were a little bit better. 94.7% of women with children survived. While women and children were the first on lifeboats, only 47.8% of children actually survived. So let's look into this women and children first command. So First Officer William Murdoch heard it a little differently than the second officer. Murdoch heard first women and children, but if men are nearby and there are empty seats and all the women and children are on board already, then they can take some of those empty seats. Second Officer Charles Lightoller heard only women and children, no men, even if there are no women and children left. So for every woman that died, so did 9 men. Maybe if these commands were heard a little differently, that wouldn't be the case. Another thing to look at is the class distinction made, which is a pretty big part of the 1997 film. In the movie, first and third class passengers were seen very differently. 61.7% of first class passengers survived in real life, compared to the 25.3% of third class passengers. The crew made up 40.3%, but only 23.8% of the crew actually made it out alive. 26 couples on board were actually on their honeymoon, and if that isn't sad enough, let's look at the lifeboat situation. Only 16 wooden lifeboats and 4 collapsible boats were carried, enough to accommodate 1,178 people. That's only a third of the Titanic's total capacity, but more than legally required, according to Oliver Smith. Today, large ships require 125% of the ship's maximum capacity to be able to be carried by lifeboats. But in 1912, ensuring only 1/3 of the passengers' lives was deemed adequate. So what really stumps me is why the Titanic actually hit the iceberg. The iceberg was actually seen 1,500 feet away, and impact followed 37 seconds later. In those 37 seconds, the Titanic and all of its passengers, including the 1,496 killed, could have been saved. Now let's watch a quick video.
You bastards! Is there anyone there? Yes. Iceberg, right ahead! Iceberg, right ahead!
So actually, this wasn't totally accurate. William Murdoch did see the iceberg right away, but did not command the ship to turn immediately. In fact, he decided that the ship should maintain course and would miss the iceberg. But 20 seconds before impact, he realized this was a mistake. The iceberg was going to be hit. According to Jasper Copping, Murdoch was involved in an eerily similar incident just a few years prior to this. In 1903, the Arabic, which he worked on, came very close to hitting another ship while at sea. But Murdoch instructed the ship to maintain course, and they fortunately avoided impact with the other ship. So Murdoch didn't get lucky this second time, and maybe if he had, or if he had decided to move immediately, the ship would have never hit the iceberg. So one last thing that we should look at is the speed the Titanic was moving. Martin Levinson explained that the ship moved at 22 knots, which is about 25.3 miles an hour. That doesn't sound very fast, but when you compare it to the top speed of 24 knots, that seems almost reckless considering the fact that the captain was well aware of icebergs in the area. In fact, the captain received 6 warnings of icebergs ahead and obviously did nothing about it. If the Titanic were traveling at a more cautious pace, maybe it would have been able to turn in time or avoid the iceberg entirely. On April 14, 1912, the Titanic sunk 2 hours and 40 minutes after impacting a 100-foot iceberg which came off of the coast of a Greenland glacier. The Titanic should have never happened. It was easily avoidable. Had there been more lifeboats, had the lifeboats been filled to capacity, had the first and second officers heard and acted on the same command, had Murdoch acted immediately, had the ship moved cautiously, had the captain listened to warnings of the icebergs ahead, maybe I wouldn't be talking about this in the first place because the Titanic would have missed the iceberg and it wouldn't even have been a newsworthy event. So, next time you go on a ship or a boat of any kind, just look around at the number of lifeboats you see and thank the Titanic for giving us these rules and regulations that we have now. Bon voyage!